Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Shifty's 49ers Talk. In this video, we're going to talk about breaking news, and it's not good, unfortunately. Jason Verrett out for the year, tore his Achilles. What a bummer. Now, for the 49ers, where do we go from here? That's coming right up. It was announced that Jason Verrett has torn his right Achilles. And first and foremost, what I want to say is I just feel absolutely gutted, absolutely heartbroken for Jason. Man, he's a guy who is a fantastic football player, great person by all accounts, coaches, teammates, everything. So that's what I want to say first of all, but just talk about absolutely bad luck. You know, one of the big injuries in terms of players that we've seen in recent years in the world of sports is, of course, Klay Thompson. Think about Klay Thompson, Achilles and an ACL. Jason Verrett has done both of those in the last 6 years. So if we look at his injury history, this is just some of it. In 2016, tore his left ACL. In 2018, tore his left Achilles. Then for the 49ers, last season, 2021, tore his right ACL. And then it happened yesterday, tore his right Achilles. So you just feel absolutely gutted for the guy. And really, hopefully, this is probably going to be the end of his career. Hopefully, he has a great career after football, whether it's coaching or whatever else he wants to do with his life. But best of luck and best of wishes to Jason Verrett and, of course, his family too. Now, moving on to the 49ers. So this is going to leave a bit of a hole because after Emmanuel Moseley went down against the Carolina Panthers, the 49ers secondary just hasn't looked as good. We were all, of course, hoping that Verrett would come back, be able to play at the level he played in 2020 and really solidify the position. So that's not going to happen now. So what did the 49ers do here? And that's what we're going to talk about coming up next. So the first thing that I want to talk about are going to be some of the internal candidates who are going to basically be stepping in and being that starting outside cornerback. The first one is, will we just continue as what we had done the last few weeks? And that's having Deommodore Lenoir out on the other starting cornerback opposite Mooney Ward. Now, Lenoir, I think, has done a very solid job. Not fantastic. He's not as good as Moseley yet. Not as good as, Jason Verrett when healthy. But I think he's done okay. One of the big issues with the 49ers in recent weeks too is the defensive line just hasn't been as effective getting after the quarterback, but I think overall Lenoir is a solid option, and honestly, to me, this is probably the most likely option the 49ers will go with, especially in the next couple of weeks, just before we maybe make any moves or try to make any adjustments. The other internal candidate would be, well, what about Ambry Thomas? Now, to me, I thought Ambry did a great job down the stretch last season. Of course, last season, his rookie year, he did have a couple of rough games. You look at the Cincinnati game, not so great. But I think if you give him reps, give him time, he can be a solid cornerback. I'm not saying he'll ever be a shutdown guy by any means, but I think he can be solid and be a good contributor. Now, one of the benefits here, going with Ambry Thomas, or honestly going with any other potential guys outside, is that you then move Deommodore Lenoir into the slot, where I think early in the year he did a fantastic job. But not only that, there's also another positive knock-on effect, is that to me then you can move Jimmy Ward back to free safety, where he plays his best football. Now, Jimmy Ward should have the cast coming off, whether very soon, if not already. Now, I know a lot of people are, of course, also big fans of Tashaun Gipson. I think through the first 5 or 6 games, Gipson was very, very good. The last few weeks, though, like against the Falcons, against the Chiefs, against the Rams, not as good, really not nearly as productive, got beat many times. So in my opinion, I would actually very much consider bringing Ambry Thomas on the outside corner with Mooney Ward. In the slot, you would then have Lenoir and Sammy Womack, and then you move Jimmy Ward and you have Hufanga at safety position with Gipson and Moore and those guys, and Odom as depth at safety. So that's will be my preferred route, but I don't know if the 49ers will take that. Now, the last of the internal candidates that I do want to talk about here is going to be the guy who just feels like he's been here forever, probably because he has, and that's Dante Johnson. Now, to me, look, he's on the practice squad. I think he'll be called up to the active roster if he's not already, and I think he's a guy who's not going to be a starting guy. I think he'll be a depth piece. Now, let's just say if we were to put Ambry Thomas out there, and if he struggles, then you potentially put in the veteran Dante Johnson, but I think he's a guy much more of a depth piece moving forward. So to me, I've said what I would do internally. I would rather Ambry Thomas, you scoot Lenoir inside, but my prediction would be they keep Lenoir on the outside. They have Jimmy Ward and Sammy Womack on the slot, Mooney Ward out there, and then they keep Gibson and Hufanga at safety, which in terms of just consistency and chemistry might not be a bad option either. Now, coming up next, I'm going to talk about a few possible external candidates. Now, with these external candidates, remember, the trade deadline is passed, so we're basically looking at guys who are free agents or guys who are on other teams' practice squads. So you're not going to be able to pick up a Marshawn Lattimore or, a Jair Alexander or Jalen Ramsey. You're just not. So who are some of the options out there? Well, to me, I'm looking for some veteran guys who've had some solid play, and basically we would hope they would have a similar impact at the cornerback position as Tashaun Gibson had at the free safety position. So the first guy I want to talk about is going to be longtime veteran Xavier Rhodes. Now, he is currently on the Bills practice squad, so we could theoretically sign him to the active roster, and that wouldn't be a major issue. Now, of course, it would probably take him a couple of weeks at least to get acclimated to the defense, but I think it could be a solid move. Is he going to be a shutdown guy? Of course not, but I think he could be a solid contributor, been around the league a long time, played in some big games, so that's the first guy that I would look at. Most recently, he was with the Colts, and I think he's had some good years there, and of course, really solid career in Minnesota before that. Now, looking at the next option that I'm actually taking a look at is going to be AJ Bouye. Now, he's a guy also been around the league for many years, really had some great years initially in Denver, then he moved on to Jacksonville, was with Gus Bradley there, so he's played in a very similar defense. So he's someone that we could pick up. He is 31 years old, but again, at this point, you're not going to find super young, talented, great cornerbacks just because they're not going to be out there in free agency, and we can't, of course, trade for them anymore. Now, so I think Bouye would be a solid option too. Again, similar to Rhodes, would take him a little bit of time. Now, the last guy I'm going to talk about is someone who could be potentially, I think people either could love this move or would absolutely hate it, and I could understand both arguments, but would be Kevin King. So formerly second-round pick of the Green Bay Packers. To me, they played a lot of man coverage, and that's really not his game in my opinion. Coming out of school from Washington, I liked him a lot more as a zone corner. Really ideal size, athleticism. He's only 27 years old, so someone who maybe could really just use a change of scenery. He's had his clear and obvious struggles there in Green Bay, but maybe moving to the 49ers, a different scheme, just a new environment could really help him out, could potentially resurrect his career. But those are the three external guys that I'm considering who we could bring in, just not even to be a starter, but just for those depth pieces, because we know any given Sunday, guys can get hurt, guys can go down. You have to have quality depth. The 49ers know that as well as anybody. Alrighty guys, so I'm going to leave it there for the video, talking about, of course, Jason Verrett's big injury, and it is such a bummer, but I did want to look at some of the other candidates that we could have, or what direction the 49ers could go moving forward in the season. We're only at the halfway point. There's a lot of games to be played, so there are moves to be made as well. But let me know what you guys think of the guys that I talked about. If you guys have any thoughts on players we could bring in, put that in the comment section. Do subscribe to the channel if you're new. I really appreciate all you guys. I'm going to be streaming the Sunday Night Football game, of course, Chargers at the 49ers. I will also be streaming a game earlier that day too. I'll announce that pretty soon. And yeah, guys, what I'm going to say at this point here, got two things. The butt counts. I'm going to catch you guys on the flip side.